find such a love at our age. Whoever thought we could dance on a thrilling...
Welcome to Couples Therapy in 7 Words. I'm your co-host, Judy Alexander, and I'm here with my husband, Dr. Bruce Chalmer.
Hello, Judy. Hello, viewers and listeners. Judy, what's today's title?
We're all dating the same guy, an interview with Charity Sinclair.
We just had that interview. What a delightful interview that was. You will note, folks, just if you happen to be, far fewer people are seeing this than hearing it. Most of you are hearing it. If you happen to be among the relatively smaller number of people who are viewing us, the video, you'll note that we don't have her on video, so the interview portion is without video. She maintains some degree of anonymity about that. And it's funny, we didn't ask her about that. I suspect it's just has to do with the subject matter of her book,
Right.
Talking about a lot of folks portraying some of the men in her life and I think generous, but nevertheless not always complimentary terms when she's talking about toxic relationships. But it was just delightful talking with her, and we've read her book and really enjoyed it, as we talk about in the interview. Just briefly, let's just put in a plug for our books.
Okay, well, since the topic of betrayal came up so much during the interview, why don't we talk about betrayal and forgiveness, how to navigate the turmoil and learn to trust again.
And as I mentioned to Charity, that a lot of what she's writing about in there is how can she trust herself again after having gone through a 7-year relationship with a guy who turned out, that title, We're All Dating the Same Guy, spoiler alert, it's because he turned out to be, she heard from I think it was 2 or 3 other women ultimately who were all dating the same guy like him that she was about to marry.
At the same time.
At the same time. And she was within weeks of marrying him. It was really something. Anyway.
And how she was able to get past that
and
build a life for herself.
And could she learn to trust herself and other people again?
And apparently she has.
She has.
Her journey is, she's a great writer, so her journey is a very interesting one and worth the read.
Absolutely. And I've got a couple other books as well you can check out. And then, here they come.
Yes, Reigniting the Spark, Why Stable Relationships Lose Intimacy and How to Get It Back is one of them. And it's not about communication, why everything you know about couples therapy is wrong.
Yes, and you've got a book out as well.
Yes, I do. The Blue Tent, Erotic Tales from the Bible by Laria Zilber.
Erotic tales, so if you're looking for some really nice, beautiful, well-written, and steamy erotica.
Thank you.
Go for that book. Absolutely. So let's get on with our interview, and we'll see you on the other side.
Our guest today is Charity Sinclair. Charity Sinclair is an author and storyteller on a mission to help women laugh, heal, and find joy in dating after the pain of toxic relationships. In her new book, We're All Dating the Same Guy, Charity reveals her own journey, discovering her fiancé's double life, calling off a wedding, and setting out to rediscover herself. Charity blends her love for travel and humor to bring fresh insights on the wild world of modern dating and the lessons hidden within it. Charity, welcome to Couples Therapy in 7 Words.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
Well, we're delighted to have you. So we always like to start off with our guests. Usually what I say is, how'd you get into the work you do? But of course, what you're writing about in that book it's not just, it isn't even mostly your work in the employment sense. It's all about your life in some really interesting ways. I've been very much enjoying your book, by the way. So how'd you get into that? And, tell us something about your own journey.
Yeah, sure. So I'm not a writer by trade, actually. So this was like a fun passion project for me. And really, my book started out as an email to a bunch of my girlfriends during the pandemic. I had moved home. I wasn't in the same city. I was single again after being off the market for almost a decade. And I was like, I'm going to share my stories about what's happening out there. And it was just a way to connect with my girlfriends, have some kind of banter back and forth. And it evolved into something that I hadn't even intended originally. And I thought, you know what, let me take these stories because I had done a lot of work on myself at the time as well, and hired coaches and therapy. And so I took kind of my stories around dating that were so fun and so entertaining, and had a so what to them. And it was a bit more of a learning lesson, and turned it into a book, and just wanted to help other women that have been through the same situation as me, and kind of provide hope and a little bit of fun in terms of it's not the end of the world after you break up with someone and you will find someone else. So that's a little bit about the how the book got started. Professionally, I do data analytics, so you can see a little bit of that within my book. And yeah, so that's a little bit about me.
Well, your book is so light and breezy, but you write about this very serious subject of dating a. Well, I don't quite want to pathologize him. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your fiance with whom you broke up and called off your
Yeah,
wedding?
sure. Yeah. So the context behind kind of my journey is I essentially was 4 weeks away from my wedding. I had just come back from my bachelorette party and I got a text from this random person, and they asked if I was so and so's fiance. And I said, yeah, who's this? And they were like, oh, it's his ex-girlfriend. And so, of course, I'm starting to feel concerned. And I'm like, oh, okay, when did you guys date? And she said, oh, we broke up 4 months ago. And I had been with this guy for 7 years. I'm like, what? Right. So like my heart's starting to quicken. My eyeballs are like bulging out of my and this was all while I was like in office at work. So I pack up all my stuff, I leave, I like quickly text him, and he was saying, oh no, don't believe her. She's crazy. She is, just a friend that I met when I was traveling for work. She wanted to date me, but I said no. That's why she's so upset. That's why she's doing all this stuff. Don't listen to her. Right. So I got a lot of gaslighting and an alternate story. And sure enough, when I got her on the phone, she had a very different version. That was that they had dated for 4 years. He had seen her and fly down to he was calling it work trips. They were not work trips, and had been living this double life for years. And she had all the kind of evidence to back up her story. And so I ended up calling off my wedding. And within this time frame, he had told me, um, I when I broke up with her, I knew I wanted to marry you. I've seen the light since. I
Mm.
haven't dated anyone else. I've been honest with you. And I didn't tell him about the other woman that reached out to me.
Yeah.
That also was casually dating him. And the time that he was saying that he had been honest. So it was this like compulsive chronic lying. And I signed up
Mm.
for emergent therapy. And I know you were very sensitive around like how do we label this person, right? Because it's easy to understand it if you can label someone.
Mhm.
And so I was asking my therapist, like, what is this? Like, this guy is on his hands and knees crying to me. Does he really mean it? Is he really crying? She's like, no, probably not. It's all crocodile tears. It's just
Mhm.
manipulation to get you back. She's like, my best guess is he's, a narcissistic sociopath. And so, of course, that sent me into like a spin of researching all these books and what that means and whatever. And, the only real way to understand if that's the case is he has to take a test. and and who's gonna answer that? I think truthfully, knowing the intention behind it. So we will never know, but I think, all the signs were there in terms of the chronic lying, the double life, the lack of
Yeah.
empathy. So yeah, so that's my story and just kind of breaking that off. And then how do I date again after being
Yeah.
completely
Yeah.
betrayed? How do I trust, and kind of the trauma that I experienced afterwards. So yeah, that's a
Mm.
little bit about him and my story and kind of what instigated the whole thing.
And if I can maybe telegraph a little bit of what's in the rest of your book, it's a lot of, and you can tell me if I'm sort of mischaracterizing, but one way to read it, it's a lot of stories about how you can manage the trauma you got over, which of course is going to understandably make you like super sensitive to seeing that possibility in a lot of other people, but also protect yourself because even if somebody isn't, even if they don't fit the DSM definition of a, narcissistic sociopath or something like that, there are guys who can be, to use the technical term, assholes in various ways. I guess we all have that capability, I guess. And it's just an interesting bunch of cautionary tales, which you tell in a very funny style, but also, it just seems like you learned a lot and you want to share that with other women. Is that kind of what you're after there?
Yeah, 100%. And that, some of the lessons here were great ones, right? It was a growth opportunity. And so how did I take what I learned and kind of looked for that? And like what were like the red flag signs? I was really going forward when it came to dating and courting. Um, no bullshit when it came to word versus action alignment, right? If someone was telling me that they're really into me, they'd love to see me again, but then there was like no follow up, right? That's inconsistent. And so for me, I wanted to be with someone where it felt like there was velocity, it felt like there was momentum, there were honest, open conversations. And I was quick to, I think, look for something else in that case. And that was healthy. That was good. I was prioritizing my boundaries and believing the actions versus believing the words, which was
Yeah.
way different than my past relationship. But there were also like negative implications as well. The ability to trust again, um, and quickly putting someone in a box, the no box, right? If they did
Mhm.
anything remotely bad. And what I learned was actually narcissists, they compromise 6% of the population. So the majority of folks are actually like decent people.
Mm.
And
Yeah, it's funny how that's true. Yeah.
yeah, and they could just have, bad learned relationship behavior, just like I have some bad learned relationship behavior. And so instead of just labeling someone as like, oh, that's super toxic or whatever else, um, how could I, and that was an improvement for myself, how could I have a conversation around some of those situations as opposed just to completely cutting them off? But out of the
Yeah.
gate, I would be more likely to just cut them off and run. And
Hmm.
there's a specific instance where I was dating this younger guy and he was into me. He was like a super romantic, and I kind of took what he had shown and said, "No way, this is love bombing." I was watching his words and actions like very, very curiously for the first 6 months, and then there was an instance where he had gaslit me. And it was basically, he was saying, oh, you said you were going to FaceTime me. Let's FaceTime. And I was like, I didn't say that. We're
Wow.
not FaceTiming. And afterwards, I had talked to him about it and said, hey, you know, do you realize what you just did? That's called gaslighting. And he had no idea.
And I have to
And
tell you, I really appreciate, and as I was reading the book, I appreciated this. I remember that particular incident, how you use the term gaslighting in a way that is meaningful and isn't inflated. Because a
yeah,
lot of times people use gaslighting when somebody's simply lying to them. And I'm not trying to justify, lying to someone, but I'm observing, no, people lie a lot, but gaslighting, that particular quality of trying to make the other person think they're crazy, that's the part that's like super toxic. And
yeah,
I would just have to express appreciation. You use the term. we,
Yes,
we
it
we
is
we talked about
misused a
this, right?
lot.
It's
Yes.
often well, it's inflated.
Mhm.
It's sort of inflation happens to the term, and sort of it kind of loses its meaning. But no, you were using it in a way that said, "Oh boy, this is someone who's really trying to mess with your head on some level." Now, the 24-year-old guy, as I'm remembering reading it,
yeah.
he wasn't on the level of your ex-fiance.
Right.
But he did cross into that territory, it sounds like. And it sounds like that was the one that really convinced you that this was not going to work.
And I think it was just unconscious behavior from his past relationships, how he was raised and
Mhm.
how he sought attention. And it wasn't and I will say when I had brought it up and we had the conversation about it, it didn't happen again. And I think that's the difference between someone who is, for instance, a narcissist, where the same behavior is going to repeat itself versus someone who is more geared towards growth, open listening and things like that. And so, I may have cut him off there, but actually he shows up again if you keep on reading. I'm not sure if you got to the end, but yeah, so that was an interesting instance of, look, you do one thing wrong and then you're just immediately in the no bucket versus
Yeah.
uh can they emotionally attune to you when they, because no one's perfect.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um and is there growth and are you seeing that improvement versus not, I think is a huge difference.
My the book that my most recent book is called Betrayal and Forgiveness: How to Navigate the Turmoil and Learn to Trust Again. And that what you were just describing is that, actually, I think a lot of the book is this, really. You're taking inventories of yourself to figure out, how can you trust? There's the elements of trauma that make you maybe hypersensitive to some things that you could learn maybe aren't as much of an emergency, but then there's the important lessons you learned as well. And trying to find a balance in there is, I think it's a lot of what you write about. Does that sound right?
Yeah, it's definitely a balance. And I think the nice part that that saved me a little bit in my heart was I write a lot about travel. I love travel. I have always loved travel. I traveled during my relationship with my ex-fiance who was toxic. And so I think that, having something that is your own, um, that you can really dive into, I think, post a toxic relationship in order to like reconnect with yourself, not only yourself, but other countries, other people, I think can restore your faith a little bit. And so that was definitely part of the journey in terms of and even, when you think about travel, who can you trust? Who can you not trust, right? It can put a lot of people on high alert. And so finding the balance between those two things as I meet complete strangers in different countries, um, is a skill set that really made me have to attune to my own body and what I was comfortable with. And so that connection with body in particular was something that I completely lost touch with in my last relationship. I was so in my head. I was logicizing why he would do certain things, explaining them away. Every relationship has their problem, and not connecting with my body and my heart, which would have told a different story. Yeah.
Yeah, so what are some of the biggest red flags that you've learned to spot in dating, and how can our listeners apply these to their own lives?
Yeah. I chat a little bit about the words and actions piece. That's a big one. Just making sure that and like teasing out between the two. And I think a lot of women want to buy into the words because that's what they want. They want the romantic fantasy, instead of the reality. So just being really honest with yourself when it comes to how are they showing up. Um, Other things that I looked for is consistency. So, and this is more, I guess, in terms of the green flags. Um, are they texting you consistently? And that's something that happened in my toxic relationship is the communication wasn't great. Sometimes he would go on, I didn't know where he was for hours, and then he'd get back to me. And sometimes even when we had plans. So you don't want someone who's keeping you in the dark about where they are, someone who's proactive about their communication, super consistent in how they're communicating with you, um, is something that I looked for. Someone who's emotionally responsive, able to listen, when you bring up a concern, when you say, hey, when you did that, this is how it made me feel, and having them attune to that and say, oh, okay, I didn't know. And maybe it's a change of their behavior and maybe not. Maybe it's just them understanding you a little bit more and where you come from, right? It has to be a little bit of shift for both of you to be able to work together in a relationship. Other red flags for me personally, um, my fiance, he was a sales guy and he was very charismatic. He was a great talker. He loved to be the center of attention. But we went out and I'm super social too. And I loved that about him at first. And so we go to these events together. We'd both chat with people and it would really hit the extroversion nerve for me, which was great. But over time, that turned into, I realized, oh, he's actually only focused on like getting attention from other people within these social conversations and not
Mm.
like recognizing perhaps when I want to leave or where I am within the room and checking in with each other. And I almost felt uh I don't know the word for it. Just a bit I guess within the corner within some of these like public scenarios, and it wasn't a great feeling. I talked to him about it, and it would just happen again. And so I was like, man, do I really need someone that's so focused on everyone else as opposed to attuning to kind of like, okay, I got my chat and let's go. Um,
Mhm.
so that's something going forward that I actually didn't prioritize. It's great to have someone who can talk and connect with other people, but having someone be like the funny guy in the room actually was a huge turnoff for me.
Yeah.
Um,
Did you find yourself making excuses for him and his behavior?
oh yeah, oh definitely, yeah,
That's
and
kind of a classic, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
yeah,
says the woman who's been there.
yeah,
With
and
me, I
just
hate
Not
to
with
add.
Bruce. Thank God. That's why I'm still with
most
him.
definitely. And the excuses were like, well, he enjoys it. He loves going out. We both love going out, right? And so that was maybe I'm just being too needy.
Hmm.
And that was a flag for me now of like, no, it's okay to have needs. It's okay to not feel like you need to be the quote unquote cool girl, right? And like everything's okay. And any sign of you needing attention is a sign of insecurity. No, like there are certain needs that you have and it's okay. But I wanted so much to be the cool girl, right? And like, oh, it doesn't matter, it's cool. So that was something that I worked on too.
Hmm.
Mm.
Um, and one of the things that I will say switched for me and looking for a healthy relationship compared to what I had before, I think with my past relationship, I put a lot of value on finances and
Hmm.
them having a great job, having the allure or illusion of a lot of money, and which is kind of bizarre because I have a great career. I have my own money. I don't need to depend on anyone else financially. Like the whole dynamics around men and women within relationships economically has shifted. Within the past 20 years, women are graduating at a higher rate than men when it comes to college degrees, right? And
Yeah.
so it's totally shifting how we see these things, but we're stuck within this um, archaic view of like the man has to be the provider financially. And you can still look for masculine traits, and providing can be in a different way than just with money. And I think that I had confused in my last relationship. And so in my when I went forward and looking for healthy relationships, it was more about how do I focus on someone who has the same financial values as me?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're a woman who is expecting a man to pay for everything, um, that might mean, or most likely means, that you don't even know what your own financial values are. And so, how can you depend on someone else? Like, the guy could make a bunch of money, but he could also be really horrible at saving. And so,
Hmm.
actually, when it
Mhm.
comes down to your total asset value and things like that, it may not be that much. So, how secure does that make you feel within that relationship? And you may not even know, right? And so, the more I think you can educate yourself around finances, know your own financial values, what you value, how you want to live your life, it'll make it easier to look for a partner that values those same things. And it's not just about like, is he going to pick up the bill on the date, which I think is a much more superficial, um, quote unquote, green light for, the courting process.
I noticed at one point in the book you have I think a really nice 2 by 2 chart. I will say parenthetically here, by the way, you mentioned a math background, and I
Yeah.
used to be a statistician before I was a psychologist. So I actually wrote a statistics textbook back in 1986. So I go way back. But that phenomenon, you had a nice 2 by 2 table where I think what were the headings were, there's compatibility and there's chemistry, and the evaluating somebody, whether or not you fit in those domains, and you end up with 4 cells, and one of them is the sweet spot where you have them both. And I think what you're describing, that sense of, it isn't so much what somebody's bank account is or whether they're picking up the tab at dinner. It's much more about, do your values around things like money align? Can you build a life together? If that's what you want to do, you better be compatible, not just in chemistry, which is also important, but also in that sort of financial compatibility. I'll throw something else in there too, which is, I think the phenomenon you're describing, which is much more true of your generation than it is of ours, of women tending to have, certainly among educated women, tending to have more assets available, being financially independent. That of course, I will opine that's a good thing, not a bad
Mhm.
thing. I'll also note it's left a lot of men not knowing how we're supposed to be. And I hear this from a lot of women saying, why can't I find a guy who knows how to be the guy, even though I am financially independent and, can't I be a strong woman, but find a guy who wants to be the guy? And it is very difficult, it seems like, for men. Is that it? Do you have that experience, or can you speak to that? Uh-oh.
To send you the title
There you go.
afterwards.
Wait,
We lost you there
you
for a
dropped
second.
out for a moment. So
Yes.
Oh,
so
Say
start
again.
again.
okay.
Yeah.
Can you, yeah. So I read a book. I'll have to send you the exact title of it, and it's all about masculinity within this new age and how do you define it. And it's attuning to a woman in a different way and understanding her needs, which may not be financial, right? There are multiple ways to, I think, provide safety that aren't necessarily paying for something.
Mhm.
Um, I don't remember the specifics, but I'll send it to you. But the general premise is in leading, and even when it comes to sex and things like that, how do you provide a space for you to have romantic time together where the woman isn't thinking about like, oh, I have to rush to get to work or whatever else, right? So like it's like
Mhm.
little examples like that of like how you can provide time and space and safety within an environment for a woman to let go that doesn't feel rushed, whatever else. And I just thought that sex example was a great specific one. Because did it come up in my own life of like, oh, trying to like rush and have sex going out the door. And it was like, I can't even relax in that state, you know? And someone might think it's like a fun one too. And I'm like, no, 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 I need time, right? And
Mhm.
so just
Mhm.
understanding, I think, those perspectives by through asking questions. And it could be as blunt as asking your partner, like, what do you need? What do you want?
Yeah,
Yeah.
indeed. So, could you tell us about the title, We're All Dating the Same Guy, which is a great title, but what do you mean by that?
Yeah. There's multiple different connotations with this one. One is the literal one, right, of the whole situation with my ex-fiance that I had talked about. The second is, I think, really just a call to women to talk about relationships and that, like, we're all dating and we're coming across the same scenarios. And here's how my story relates to your story, and how can we connect and talk about it. And then the third, I'm not sure if you're familiar, there are these Facebook groups that have gone viral in the past couple of years called Are We Dating the Same Guy?
I have heard
And
of that. Yes, I saw that something about that a few months ago. Yeah.
yeah, and so they are essentially they're groups that are monitored by really volunteers of women who are making sure that only certain people with valid profiles come in and whatever else, and it's only a woman only environment. And people are posting essentially, hey, a picture of a man that they went on a date with and saying, hey, just want to make sure that like I'm not being cheated on or he's not seeing anyone else.
Ah,
Wow.
So the groups are a bit controversial because they're intended to provide a safe environment and an opportunity for women to kind of share stories and make sure that the men that they are dating are safe and healthy. But it can lead to, I think, unhealthy comments too around like, oh, someone's looks or things like that. So
Yeah.
it's a bit controversial. But this book speaks to the women in those groups who are single, who are dating, who are trying to find someone, who are in this like modern dating grind. And so that's kind of the third connotation. Yeah, so it was a bit fun to play around with different title names.
and you've all talked about you've been on a lot of shit dates. I mean, literally shit dates.
Yeah, I think I said when we contacted you to invite you to be on, and I think I looked, I saw that on your profile, And yeah, I've been on a lot of shit dates, no, really, literally shit dates, and then I read about it, and you had me right then. Could you explain that for us?
I love it.
Some great stories.
So wild. And like this gets back to like the fun part of dating of like I could never have imagined these scenarios in my wildest dreams. And like I have come across them in reality. So my wildest shit date was I went out to dinner with this guy. He picked me up on a bicycle and he had a little razor scooter like hung over his back. And I'm like, okay, this is different than a car, but I'm gonna go with it. And so I'm on the scooter behind him. We're heading to, it's like blocks away
So is he
downtown.
pulling you along, or are you like using your own little
No,
foot power?
I'm just scooting out of breath behind him. So we stop at a red light. He like bends down to tie his shoelace, and there was a package that drops out of his chest pocket. And I go, "Oh, hey, you dropped something. What is it?" And he goes, "Oh, it's his like eyes are huge golf balls. He's like, it's my stool sample." And I'm like, "Your stool sample? Why
I
do you
mean,
have
everybody
that?"
isn't supposed to bring a stool sample to the first date.
I know.
Didn't I
I'm
bring
like,
one to my
"What?"
first date? Too?
Yeah. Like, gotta be prepared, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I'm like, "Why do you have that?" He's like, "Oh, well, I'm super into my health. Every 6 months, I send it off to a lab in California. I thought I could send it like before the date started, like on my way to pick you up. I didn't find a mailbox." And at first, I'm trying to be open to this experience. I'm like, "Okay, all right, let's get you to mail this poop." And so we like, sure enough, find like a mailbox that's right across the corner. He goes to put it in there and he's like, having trouble with it. And I'm like, "What's going on?" He's like, "Oh, it won't fit." I'm like, "What do you mean it won't fit? It's squishy. Just push it in. Push it in. Come on, let's go." And he's like, "No, no, no, it's in a test tube." And so I ended up going out with this guy in his stool sample in his chest pocket for the whole date. And it was just like absurd. Nothing you'd ever think about. Yeah. So that was one of them. Another one was a second date where a bird I was in New York City. I was talking smack about New York City, and a pigeon heard me
Uh-huh.
and pooped on my head.
Ugh.
And the guy was like, "Oh, we can head to, no worries. We're heading to a restaurant." But the restaurant was like 6 blocks away. And so I'm like walking down the sidewalk with him, trying to be casual, like having this conversation. And I like walk halfway down the block and I'm like, "I'm sorry. I just can't pretend to have like a normal conversation with you with bird poop like all the way down the side of my head. Like, we need to go to a restaurant now so I can clean this up." So yeah, that's a couple of the many that I have, and I could keep going, but
Yeah,
I'll
it's
I'll
indeed.
leave I'll leave the best for within the book.
And yet you said you'd rather have a shit date over a toxic one any
Yeah,
day. So what do you mean by a toxic date or toxic relationship?
yeah. I would just rather have a bad date where I don't vibe with the guy, or I don't know, just a random scenario that I had played out, as opposed to someone who is manipulative, who is not congruent in their behavior. And I just am totally turned off by that now. So it's just not something I'll take a poop date over, a guy who is super charismatic and like tells you the whole world, but maybe has really not aligned intentions underneath, even though
Mm.
it might seem like a fairy tale. I
You
I
do
will
have
take I'll take the shit date any day.
I think as I recall, you have a hilarious table in the book giving several reasons why shit dates. It's like, what is it? They empty out space for other things, and
Yeah.
they make you appreciate how nice other things smell. I forgot exactly how you said it. It was much funnier than what I just said, but it was
Yeah.
that sort of can give people. See, I'm reluctant to say give them a taste of the book because that would be a bad association, but it gives them a sense of how funny your book is,
It's
and
very funny.
how can people get a hold of the book? And if they wanted to contact you for any reason, how would they do that? And tell folks how to find stuff about you.
Amazon, it's all different types of formats. It's audiobook, hard copy, or Kindle. And you can hit me up on Instagram or TikTok under We're All Dating the Same Guy handle. In addition, if you want to check out any bonus content that I have, you can go to sameguybook.com/podcast. And there's some bonus content for your audience in there, just on like dating tips, especially using my data background of like how I prioritize for my time. So feel free to check it out. It is a huge time saver. Yeah, recommend it.
But can I ask you, are you dating anybody now?
Yeah, so I'm actually I have a kid and I'm pregnant and I'm in a very healthy partnership now. So things have changed and for the better. And and I don't know if I'd be in this healthy relationship if it wasn't for my bad one.
There
So
you go.
That
I
is,
have a lot
yeah.
of gratitude. So for finding a man who is so giving, who is so loving, who is a great dad. Yeah, so I'm really happy now. Thank you for asking.
Oh, good. Life lessons learned.
And
Yes.
I do point that out in my book about betrayal. So many people that I've worked with who've been through these awful things express gratitude, even if they haven't found, the right person finally, as you have, which is lovely. But even if they haven't, they'll often express gratitude for the lessons they learned by going through that pain. It is such a growth experience. And now I feel like I'm quoting my late mother. It's good for your character, but she was right.
Yeah.
You sure do learn a lot from going through hard stuff if you can open your heart to learning it.
Well, if you're looking for a wonderfully entertaining book, We're All Dating the Same Guy is just a great read, and I think I read it in like 1 or 2 sittings.
Thanks you so much for doing this.
Welcome back. We hope you enjoyed that interview with Charity. I know we did, and we, as I said, just love the book.
Yep, highly recommend her book. So, what should people do if they want to get in touch with us and be on our show
yes.
or suggest topics or anything?
What a
like
great
that?
question. You can go to our website, ctn7.com. That's CT as in couples therapy in 7, the number 7.com.
Yes, indeed.
And you can pose questions to us. You can suggest topics. You yourself can even suggest being a guest on the show and sign up for a slot where we could interview you.
And something else you can sign up for, which I want to mention in particular now, my newsletter,
Right.
Dr. Chalmers' newsletter. And I've just switched over from the old platform, which just involved you getting emails, to now I've switched over to Substack. It seems to be the thing
It's
that people
the thing.
are doing.
Everybody's on Substack.
So I've got a
these days.
Substack. It's what do I call it? Oh yeah, it's called Be Kind, Don't Panic, and Have Faith. That's what it's called. My Substack, Dr. Bruce Chalmer. So check that out. And
Your motto.
yes, my motto, which for those few of you who are watching, are seeing the cup
That has.
is-
Yes, our merch. We
Here's our
also
merch.
sell merch. If you
We
go to
do.
ctn7.com, you can purchase our merch.
You can purchase our merch, yes. And I will note that when I'm putting these newsletters up on Substack now, I'm also putting an audio version so you can listen. And I started a podcast that is just that.
Wow.
So it's a podcast that will have the stuff that I'm putting in my Substack, and that's a different podcast from this one. In fact, I do put in a plug there for this one. This is the one where we have us and we're interviewing folks, and it's a longer format. My Substack podcast, which is called Be Kind, Don't Panic, and Have Faith, is a much shorter format. It's kind of 10-minute kind of thing, and it's just me talking about my favorite topics.
There you go.
So you can check that out as well. And so until next time,
Remember, be kind
don't panic.
and have faith.